Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Course Oblivion, which is episode 17 of season 5 of Star Trek Voyager. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek as determined by my user polls. The episode that won my latest user poll for Voyager was Course Oblivion. So Course Oblivion is the episode in which we see Voyager having this enhanced warp drive, and they say they're going to get home in 2 years, yet this was never talked about before, and we see Tom and B'Elanna getting married, and then the ship starts falling apart and demechanizing. The structure is weird, and then people start getting really sick. B'Elanna, in fact, dies. And then Tuvok and Chakotay do some investigating on exactly what the hell is going on, and they find out that they are not the real Voyager crew. They're actually the duplicates that was created back in the 4th season episode Demon. And that's why we didn't know anything about this enhanced warp drive, because it's not really Voyager. And then so they realized that because the enhanced warp drive kind of affected they didn't count for the fact that they're actually like demon. They're made out of that silver blood stuff, and so it has is destroying the ship. Even when they turned it off, it's still a cumulative effect. There's nothing they can do about it, and everyone starts dying. Chakotay wants to go back to the demon planet, but Janeway is still determined to get back to Earth. But then when Chakotay dies, she realizes, no, he was right, we should turn around and go back to the demon planet. Well, it was actually a bit too late when she made that decision. They try to go to another Class Y planet, but are chased away. They could destroy the ship and kill a lot of innocent people, but Janeway decides to hold on to her principles and refuses to do that. However, as they're trying to fly back to the Class Y planet, they all start dying off one by one, to the point where the ship is completely falling apart, and there's only Harry, Kim, Neelix, and 7 of 9 and a few other random ensigns left. And as they realize that if they find the other Voyager, they can use their DNA to save them all, and they see the other Voyager coming. However, by this, the ship is so badly damaged that it won't come out of warp. So Harry Kim orders that they eject the warp core, because it's their only hope, so they could go back into Impulse in order to contact the real Voyager. However, when they attempt that, the ship is so structurally damaged that it falls apart and it's destroyed. And by the time the real Voyager gets there, the ship is in pieces, and they have no idea who it was, and just noted that they found the ship that was just destroyed. Alright, so let me start with my personal experience with this episode, because I am recording this in between, because I'm doing every episode of Star Trek one episode at a time, but I'm going out of order to do this because I'm doing these fun user polls to shake things up, to do things at random, give me a little break from just doing TNG and DS9. So at this stage, I just finished covering Next Generation, and also just finished season 2 of Deep Space Nine. So we'll start season 3 of Deep Space Nine soon, and then I will actually start season 1 of Voyager in a couple of months. So I'm watching it totally out of order. But point is, once I do get into Voyager properly, I will explain this backstory that I have, that because especially during the later seasons of TNG and the earlier seasons of DS9, I was obsessed with Star Trek, and I was taping every single episode off the TV and taping it and watching it and rewatching it. But as DS9 and Voyager progressed, I started getting a bit more flimsy with actually watching it. And so I even missed a few episodes. I'd only watch it once off the TV. But some of the episodes, particularly with Voyager, I think there was a couple of DS9 ones as well, I just missed entirely. Because I was, especially, this came out in 99, so especially like 97 through 99, I was, had a busy life. I was out, 97, 98, it was more as out partying, getting stoned, but early 99 is when I met my fiance in person, and say that in person because we met over the internet first, and then later I would go to New Zealand, and I believe July of 99, and then we got married in December. But she was over here in America living with me for 6 months, the first part of 99. So I was too busy, being with her. I did make time for DS9, though. That was so more important. But some of the Voyager episodes fell by the wayside because I wasn't as, interested in Voyager. So in 99, when I went to New Zealand for the first time, I didn't have a work visa. It was just a visitor's visa. I was there for 6 months, but I couldn't work. We didn't have much money. My fiance and eventually wife was working full time. So a lot of the times I was just at home with nothing to do. Like, I could go for walks, but like in the winter I didn't want to do that. And July in New Zealand is the winter. So what I did in order to fill the time was to go to the local Blockbuster. Back they even had Blockbusters in New Zealand, and rent a bunch of videos, a bunch of movies from the video store, and watch those while I was sitting around with nothing to do. And sometimes I would watch them with my fiance when she got home from work. And they had a selection of all of the Voyager episodes on VHS. There was like 2 episodes per VHS tape. You can rent them. You could rent like $5 or $10 or something. So I would do that. And I discovered a bunch of episodes that I hadn't seen. There were even some from season 2, like Tuvix, for example, was an episode I had missed when it aired. And I didn't see it for the first time until, late 99. And there were a couple of episodes from season 5 that I didn't even know existed, and this was one of them. Like, I thought I knew all of it. I didn't realize I had missed so many episodes, and some of them, like, I was aware of, like, I knew existed. Like Think Tank, for example, I knew it was the episode with George from Seinfeld, but I had only saw like the last 10 minutes of it, so I missed it, so I didn't watch it for the first time until I was over there. Like, in other episodes, like, I knew existed. Like, I think I knew the fight existed, but I didn't know that, like, the disease, the one with Harry Kim, I didn't know that existed, and I didn't know this episode existed. So I rented it from the video store, so I saw it for the first time. It wasn't even a full year. It was just like 6 months after it aired, but still, it was, a bit later. But anyway, that's just my, kind of neither here nor there, but that's my personal experience with this episode. Now, as to my opinion of the episode, so those who are really familiar with my channel might have heard me talk about the movies The Departed and No Country for Old Men. They won Best Picture at the Academy Awards, the Oscars, won like consecutively, like 1 year after another. I think it was like, can't even remember what years it was, 2007, 2008, or something like that. I don't know, something around that time. Maybe it was 2006, I don't know. But anyway, the reason why those 2 movies are significant to me, and it's just a funny coincidence that they both won Best Picture one after the other, because they're both movies that I do not like. And more specifically, not just that, they're both movies that I did like, that I thought were good as I was watching them. I had a good start, a good middle, and I was really into them, and I thought they were great, and then the ending came and pissed me the fuck off and ruined the entire movie. The Departed, I'm fond of saying that the ending felt like it was written by a 12-year-old. Like they had professional writers writing this movie, and then they got to the ending and like, oh, I'm too lazy to write the ending. Let's just get my 12-year-old son to do it for me. That's what it felt like. And No Country for Old Men, on the other hand, like it felt like the writer like jumped out of the screen and jumped right next to me and started screaming in my ear, "Look at how artsy I am! I am so artsy! This is such a piece of art!" Which is not, rather than telling a good fucking story, especially that whole monologue with fucking what's the dude, the dude from The Fugitive? I'm brain farting on his name, but you know, the grumpy old dude. He had a monologue at the end of the film, and they just cut the credits, and I'm like, what the fuck is that? It's like, yeah, seriously, like someone's screaming in my ear, ooh, this is so artsy, and it ruined what was a good film. And plus, like, the main character, and you're not going to tell me he's not the main character, because he clearly was the fucking main character. I have people who love the movies like, oh, he's not the main character. The fuck he isn't! Of course Josh Brolin's character is the main character, and he just dies off screen unceremoniously. It's like, what the fuck? But anyway, sorry. So, the reason why I bring those movies up is because my feeling for those movies also applies to this episode. Is that it was a good episode, I was into it, but then the ending ruined it. It rendered the whole fucking thing pointless and pretentious. A similar sort of reaction to No Country for Old Men, where I felt like the writer screaming in my ear, ooh, look at how artsy this is. Isn't this so artsy? Isn't this it's getting to the thing of life? It's got a message of life and death and how we handle death. And I'm like, I don't want pretentious bullshit. I want a good story. And the thing is that ending, not the whole episode, but the ending was pretentious bullshit. Because it more than that, it's different than No Country, because in this regard, it made the whole thing very nihilistic, or very apathetic, very pointless is what I'm getting at. There's no point to it other than to be like, oh, look at how depressing this is, and it makes you feel empty, and oh, blah. Now, I like depressing movies a lot. In fact, I was once dating someone who I just went on a couple of dates, and then I found out that she doesn't like any sad movies, and I was just like, what? And then she found out I love sad movies, and then that's where it ended. It didn't go any further than that. And I was so perplexed, like everyone I was talking to afterwards was like, how can you not like sad movies? Like, this blew my mind. Some of my favorite movies like have a really powerful sad ending, like 12 Monkeys, for example. My favorite movie of all time. Made me super depressed, and I loved it. So I love depressing movies, or sad movies with sad endings, but this isn't a sad ending, it's a empty ending. It's a nihilistic ending. It's a pointless ending. It's a apathetic. Like, movies like 12 Monkeys is powerful because it's sad and it has meaning and it's meaningful and whereas this is the opposite of meaningful. It's meaningless. It's pointless. There's no point to it. It's just like, ooh, look at how dark this is. Now, the reason why I say that is because how they could have fixed this ending is very simple, very easy. And I did find out, reading some of the, behind the scenes stuff about the writer's room, about this episode, that writers actually did, in fact, propose this very easy fix. But Nick Sagan, who co-wrote the teleplay, was the one who was a staunch defender. Hopefully I can bring up his exact words. He stated, it is really the story about the poignancy of Voyager's journey. There's something about trying really hard and not being quite able to achieve it, which is a reality to a lot of people. The episode about a need to be remembered, a need to be recorded, and that's the special tragedy about making a log, a kind of capsule. We know that the demon crew dies. It's about loss and remembering, death and grief. And pardon me, don't mean to be rude to Mr. Sagan, but that sounds like a very pretentious thing to say. Oh, it's about death and loss. And maybe it wouldn't be pretentious if I agreed with it, so maybe that I'm showing a bit of bias there. But here's my counter. And this is why I'm saying that it would have saved the episode had they actually listened to those other writers in the room that wanted to have. There were a couple of options. Either you could have the time capsule work. Like, it kind of pissed me off that they introduced the concept of the time capsule, and that is they had this a device made up of materials that they gathered from other worlds. In other words, it wasn't made out of the silver blood, so it wouldn't disintegrate. And it contained all their logs and a journey of all of their, the journey and everything that they've been through. And so someone would remember them. Kind of similar to like the inner light situation. Like, it's not a probe to take over someone's mind, but it's a time capsule so that, they can be remembered. And that when they tried to launch it, the launchers failed and destroyed it. And to me, that was in the super apathetic. That was the super oh, there's no meaning to anything, man. And so one of the proposals was that would actually work and not get destroyed, and Voyager would come across that. Great. That would have saved the episode. The other one was that the Voyager crew did in fact encounter the last survivors of the Silver Blood crew, and they died in the sickbay, but they got to meet them before they died. That's my preferred ending. That would have really saved the episode. And here's why. This is what the big difference to me is, because let me quote Nick Sagan again, because he said, "I think it's an episode people either love or they hate. The hate category seems to say, why do we follow a crew that isn't even our regular crew, and they feel cheated?" And that's it. This seems entirely pointless. There's no point to this episode. Why the fuck are we wasting time with a hypothetical copy and watching how depressing it is they die? Now, if the time capsule had worked, or they encountered the last surviving members of the Silver Blood crew before they died, then it would give it meaning. Then presto changeo, the episode actually means something now, because our crew, the real Voyager crew, the crew that we care about, the crew that we've been watching for 4.5 years, they would be affected by this. They would be like, holy shit, this is what our duplicates would be up to. Maybe that's how we would react. Holy shit. And if they were reading their logs and saying, oh my God, and it would give them insight, and it would be like a powerful... Imagine, let me just pitch something to you. Imagine that you see the Harry Kim, the Silver Blood Harry Kim, the Silver Blood 7 of 9, brought to sick bay on the real Voyager crew, and they're dying and disintegrating. The doctor's trying to save them, but meanwhile the real Harry Kim is standing there watching his duplicate die, and so is 7 of 9. And imagine the character impact that could have on them. Imagine how much Harry Kim would be impacted by watching a duplicate of himself die, and how much 7 of 9 you could explore her humanity, and you could have the two 7 of 9s interact, and her talk about what it's like to die, really, and to have everything sort of fall apart. Not only would that give that episode meaning, where in its current iteration there is none, it would give it powerful meaning. It would give it a really good meaning. It would be very powerful effect on our own crew, and they could explore that in a couple ending scenes and logs. But instead, you have the real Voyager come across a debris field of a ship that just died. Like, oh, that's too bad. I guess space is dangerous. That's too bad we weren't there to get there in time to save them. Oh, well, let's just make a note in our log and fuck off. I think the point of that is, ooh, look at how depressing this is. Oh, no. And that's not a point. That's just pretentious wankery. And, of course, this is just my humble opinion. And I do agree with Nick Sagan about one thing. He said that this seems to be an episode that people either love or hate. And that does seem to be the case, because there's a lot of people who love this episode. But then again, I'm not alone in hating this episode. There's a lot of people out there, and I was just for fun, I was reading the different reviews on IMDb, and you'll always find the polar extremes on no matter what the episode is. But I feel like with this episode, there was more in those extremes than less in the middle than usual. And yeah, so I think it comes down to whether or not you think it is art, or you think it's just pointless and a waste of goddamn time. And my position is that it could have been art. It could have been powerful. It could have been meaningful. But instead, they sacrificed that for wankery. Pretentious wankery. Ooh, look at how, isn't this so dark and depressing that people tried to survive and they couldn't get home? Now, to be fair, there's parts of it that work for me, particularly the scene with Janeway and after Chakotay's died and they turned around, but this whole situation's hopeless and there's only like a 20% chance of them making it to the demon planet in time, and you have Janeway falling apart and full of goo in the sort of conference lounge, and sort of talking about, you know, how this is meaning your life means something and something like that. That was a good performance by Kate Mulgrew, and that was a powerful scene. But my problem is, again, it's kind of similar, getting back to No Country for Old Men and The Departed. There were a lot of great scenes in that movie too, in those movies. A lot of great scenes, and it was really engaging. But then the ending just ruined it all for me. It just threw it all away, and that's the same thing here. It's a good scene, but it doesn't mean anything. It means jack shit, because it will have no effect. Nobody will know about it. I mean, at the very least, they could have had the fucking time capsule. Like, when that time capsule fell apart, I'm like, really? I was like, seriously? Like, really? You can't even have the time capsule fucking work. You have to be, everything's not working. Everything's doomed. It is so nihilistic. So, I don't know if that's the right term. We believe in nothing. But it's so apathetic. I think that's a better term. It's just very apathetic. It's very... there's no point to anything, who cares? And there's no point to it. Why the fuck am I watching? And so this episode frustrates me, if you can't tell yet, by my reaction. Now, funny thing is that I was just watching a review that was praising, like this episode, in the love it category, and they were praising Robert Duncan McNeil for his performance, saying he did a damn good job, which I find a bit ironic, because I just listened to the podcast from the Delta Flyers with Robert Duncan McNeil and Garrett Wang, and Robert Duncan McNeil didn't really seem to care that much for this episode, and in particular, he said he didn't like his performance. He's like, I didn't do a good job. I could have done better. Now, that doesn't mean that he's right and the review is wrong. There are certain times where I disagree with the creator themselves about when they're being overly critical about their work. for example, Trent Reznor said that Johnny Cash's version of Hurt is like far superior to his, and that he was really outdone. And I think that's just his low self-esteem talking. I think that his version, which is the version, is of course far superior. But anyway, so just because Robert Duncan McNeil says he has a bad performance doesn't mean it is. But I just find it interesting that he thought it was bad. I don't know. I don't know if I entirely agree with him either. But his larger point about the episode, his main issue was he felt like the continuity of the acting within the episode was off. That the various actors were not playing it the same way, and they weren't in sync. And like that, for example, he was a bit too over the top too soon, where it took the others longer to get there, and he felt like it wasn't edited very well. He felt like they because usually they edit down sort of the space in between lines and stuff to make it a bit more, punchy. But he felt like they were probably running short of time, and so they let the moments hang longer than they would in order to fill the time. That's just a guess on his part. And, I didn't really notice anything about that. One thing I did notice, though, is I don't like the music. And this is music that you'll hear a lot in season 5 of Voyager in particular, but I think the later seasons of Voyager, let me bring up the gentleman's name who did the music, because it's not Dennis McCarthy. And I feel like and I'll get to this when I get to season 5 of Voyager, but I feel like Dennis McCarthy was doing Star Trek less and less in this time period, and so they had different composers come in who were nowhere near as good. Paul Ballergian, however you say his name. I'm probably butchering it, and I apologize. But he did all. I can recognize his music. He did a lot in the later seasons of Voyager, and I really something about it I just don't like. It just seems this is more generic. It's really bland. It's what people. It's like they accuse Dennis McCarthy of wallpaper music when his music is the best. Better than Ron Jones. But this actually is wallpaper music. This is like bland. And that, honestly, that's something that always hit me about these season 5 episodes, and it makes it hard for me to like it. I remember like that one 30 Days, it was a similar situation. It's like, I think music that is bland can actually kind of ruin the episode a bit for me. But anywho, the other thing about this episode is that it starts off with the marriage of Tom and B'Elanna, but of course it's not really Tom and B'Elanna, and this kind of ruins the whole thing. Not that I'm a fan of Tom and B'Elanna's relationship, but pretending that I am. Like, now they can't actually do the wedding because they've already done it with these fake versions of those characters. So when they actually do have them get married, we don't see it on screen because it would have been repetitive. So they kind of fucked themselves by doing this. Now, I've heard a lot of people praising the episode for continuity because it takes place after 30 days in which Tom was demoted to ensign. Yet in this episode, he's got Lieutenant Pips on, so that's your first clue. It's not the real Tom Paris. It's not that big of a deal to me. I'm like, whatever. But it's fine, speaking of continuity, I'm getting to my biggest issue with this continuity-wise, because everyone's like, "Oh, isn't this so great? They're bringing back the Demon Planet, and they're following up on that episode Demon in season 4, which wasn't a good episode, by the way. But anyway, something I've noted in several other videos when I went back and watched the episode, Voyager, the Voyager crew is duplicated, and the episode ends with Voyager lifting up and seeing their entire crew on the surface of the planet. Just the crew, not the ship. There is no duplicate ship of Voyager. There's the Voyager ship, our Voyager, the true Voyager, the real Voyager, leaving orbit and a duplicate crew on the planet of the surface. Just the crew. Do you see what I'm getting at? There is no fucking duplicate Voyager ship. It was never duplicated. And then all of a sudden this episode, like, to me that is a huge error. And it's funny how many reviews I've watched and read that don't even mention that. Even some of the negative ones don't even mention it. And some of them are like, oh, isn't this just so great that they're doing continuity? But they're not. Because they made up a ship. And you're not going to tell me that, oh, they just created a duplicate ship later. Bullshit they did. Like, there is no ship. It was just a crew on the... And that is... I'm sorry, that's literally a starship-sized plot hole. I think I made that joke before. But it's literally a starship-sized plot hole. There is no starship. Now all of a sudden there is one. Like, where the fuck did it come from? Like, that is like one of the biggest continuity errors in the entire show. And mind you, this is a show that tried to tell us that the Borg Queen implanted 7 of 9. And the Voyager, purposely on the Voyager crew. Oh, God damn it. And that's the same season as this episode. And so it really gets to the whole season. Now, granted, this is what I call the first season of Berman Trek. Now, I think people incorrectly refer to the whole 90s era of Star Trek, Next Generation through Enterprise as the Berman Era, which it actually isn't. I think TNG seasons 1 and 2 are the Roddenberry Era. But TNG, from season 3 to 7 of TNG, all 7 seasons of DS9, and season 1 through 4 is the Michael Piller Era. Now, you might be like, well, Michael Piller was only in DS9 for the first 2 seasons. Yes, but Ira Steven Behr took over, and Ira Steven Behr was like Piller's like close pick and workmate, and they had similar mentalities, so I count that as the Piller era. Same thing with Jerry Taylor, because Michael Piller left Voyager in season 2, but Jerry Taylor, again, it was a very, the hand pick of Michael Piller and worked closely with them, and she was there in Voyager as the showrunner for seasons 3 and 4. So season 5 began the Berman Era. Now, officially, Brennan Braga was the showrunner for season 5 and 6, and Kenneth Biller was for season 7, and officially it was Brennan Braga was the showrunner for Enterprise for seasons 1 through 3, but really it was Rick Berman. It's very obvious from the writing credits and from interviews that Rick Berman started asserting his creative control, a lot tighter and more, and that Brennan Braga was essentially like a figurehead. Maybe I'm being a bit unfair. I wasn't there in the writer's room. And that's why the show got, and Star Trek in general, got noticeably worse. So, yeah, the Berman era ended in Enterprise, during Enterprise Season 3, when CBS took over and started to kick him out. Thank God. But yeah, for these last 3 seasons of Voyager and the first 2 of Enterprise, you get fucking the Berman era, where I think the quality of writing, and now you still get good episodes here and there. There's still some great episodes of season 5 and 6 and 7. But I think there's an overall decrease in quality, and the writer's room did not cohese as well. And, I mentioned Nick Sagan's a couple of times, but Brian Fuller has a story by credit, and he also co-wrote the teleplay. And Brian Fuller also loved this episode. And I was talking about Brian Fuller before, and how, because I haven't really covered Voyager yet and examined which episodes he wrote, I wasn't that sort of familiar with his writing. But the more I start to get a handle on which episodes he wrote, the more I'm starting to think I don't like him as a writer. That I don't think he's a particularly good writer. I never saw the Hannibal show, which apparently he was the showrunner. I heard it was good, but I never saw it. He came up with the idea of Discovery, and I'm not sure I like his original idea, but it's hard to say which one was him and Kurtzman. But yeah, I don't think he's a good writer, based off of the fact he loves this episode. And the only other episodes I'm really aware of he wrote was Spirit Folk. Every good writer has some terrible episodes, but still. So I'll see. I don't want to prejudge him. Once I get into Voyager full on, maybe I'll find he's a bit better. But I just feel like the writing staff in Season 5 overall, and this has been my observations of Season 5, is that they don't really have a handle on any of the characters, and they start to rewrite all of the characters and just totally misunderstand the characters. And yeah, I don't know if you necessarily get that in this episode, because you do, like, the Chakotay-Janeway relationship does, to be fair, come off fairly strong. Like, I love the interactions between the two of them, especially knowing that they're not the real ones and they are aware of this, but they're still behaving like this. So that, as I said, there's things about this episode I like, but that the ending just ruins it all. So, yeah, and it's kind of ironic that Tom Paris is going this rant about how great Earth is, and Earth is the best planet ever, and you find out it's not really the real Tom Paris. And yeah, I will say that scene when B'Elanna is dying, and they're talking, and Tom Paris is telling her about the honeymoon and whatnot, that was a really powerful scene. So maybe I do disagree with Robert Duncan McNeil, because I did think that was a good performance from him. But, yeah, I mean, or should I say it would have been a powerful scene if the episode ended up meaning anything, which it didn't, because they went with pretentious wankery instead. Just my humble opinion. I know not everyone agrees. And by the way, the whole thing with that's what you're going to choose. You can go anywhere in the holodeck for your honeymoon. You're going to choose a Chicago speakeasy in the 20s. Like, I guess, everyone has their own taste, to each their own, as they say, but what? Why, what? Like, that's the last place I'd want to go. But anyway, that's just me. I would now like to thank all those that support me on Patreon. It's very much appreciated. It does help me continue with the channel, help me grow, help me inspire me to keep going, all that sorts of nice things. I'd like to give a very special thanks to Brandon Neal Howes, Jordan Johnson, and Intarius. Thank you so very, very much for your strong support. I'd also like to give a shout out to Tyler Cease, Benjamin Mead, Greg Marley, Francisco, Chuck Hooks, Kyrie091, Anthony D. Benedictus, Ricky Medijester, Joel Lavals, Alessandro Michelosio, Norman Buchwald, Stephen Kennedy, Britton Berg, and Allison Fordyce. Thank you all so very, very much for your support. So, we do indeed have some patron comments on this episode. See if I'm in the right place. There it is. Course Oblivion. Okay. First comment is from Kyrie091, who says, Course Oblivion? More like poor shitty one. I like that. I'm going to pause right here to say I like that one. That's one of your better ones. Because this episode is shit. It makes me feel really depressed. You know that Alice in Chains song, Down in a Hole? That's this episode. It's basically depression in TV form. It's another example of something that would never be done under Gene Roddenberry's watch. Too sad. I mean, yes, Mark, we all know the Demon crew didn't have a ship, so there's a huge continuity error there. When I saw this ship, I said to myself, it's a fake! But then Benny Russell told me, it's real! So that's why the episode makes me so sad. Which is it, real or fake? Watching the Demon crew just disappear into nothing, and then the real crew just casually zips past them. No memory of their experience, no record of them at all. They just poof out of existence, and their whole story is as valuable as booty crap. I don't know, it makes me sad. Wake me up when we get to Vic Fontaine. He's so happy and calls me Pally. it's not just sad or depressing. It's empty. Like, for me, a movie that's sad or depressing can be meaningful, can be full of meaning, where this is just devoid of meaning. To me, that's the huge difference. But anyway, next comment is from Stephen Kennedy, who says, so my rating for Play-Doh is 1. I would rather watch Homer Simpson say "Doh" for 45 minutes than watch this piece of garbage out of 10. Fair enough, Stephen, and this is one of the cases where we agree for some reason. I was expecting this to be another case where we disagree, but no, we're on the same page with this one. Anyway, next comment is from Ricky, who says, this is one of the most overrated episodes and one of the most contrived episodes in the entire Star Trek franchise. I love Voyager. It's my third favorite Trek behind TNG and DS9, and Voyager is seen as vastly inferior to most shows in Trek, and yet according to the majority of the fan base, the people who don't like Voyager will point to this one episode as being one of the best of the show, and I'm like, are you friggin' kidding me? This episode sucks. First of all, how in the hell did the Demon crew replicate Voyager? Go back and watch Demon. If you will see that Voyager leaving the planet and the Demon crew has no Voyager ship, and also you're really supposed to believe that they built Voyager in a small amount of time, and on top of that, they have no memory of being replicated from the original crew, and also to have a strong desire to go to Earth. I'm sorry, there's too much serendipity to comprehend, and also this episode is boring, and I have no attachment to these characters, and also what really irritates me is that when the Demon crew are looking for the real Voyager crew, they nearly make it, but all of a sudden they disintegrate, and the real Voyager has no idea of what just happened to the distress call and are totally unaware of who they were. And if the real Voyager crew got to see their duplicates and tried to aid them, then maybe we could have seen a reaction from the real crew and the interactions, and then the ship got destroyed right in front of the real Voyager crew. Then that would have saved the episode for me, but no, didn't. So the entire episode was incredibly pointless, and I always skip it in my rewatch of the show, so my rating is a 2 out of 10. As per the norm, we are on the same exact page, Ricky. Although I don't know if I would say it's contrived so much. I don't know if I agree about the serendipity, because I don't really have an issue with, the Voyager, the Demon crew wanting to get home to Earth, because they are duplicates of the real Voyager crew. So that part of it I don't mind, but the part where they have a ship where they never had a ship, that is complete bullshit. So I do, of course, agree with you 100% there. And I mean, I don't know if I agree about it being boring, but it is kind of boring because you don't care about this crew because they're not the real crew, and because of the fact they don't even interact with the real crew, then there's no point. There's no point. Anyway, next comment is from Matty Jester, who says, not a particularly good episode. This one, pretty mediocre. I never found the Silver Blood idea very interesting, so returning to it was unnecessary in my opinion. I read somewhere that there was an early story idea for the Silver Blood was to have Voyager return home to Earth. Everyone is happy, but then Starfleet realizes it's not the real Voyager, but then the Silver Blood one. Shock! Oh no, maybe that idea could have been better than this one. Oh well, at least my boy Harry Kim got to be in command at the end. So every cloud has a silver lining. 5 out of 10 for me. I actually think that the Silver Blood crew getting back home to Earth would have been even worse. Because it's what I said about like the B'Elanna and Tom wedding is like, now that you showed a fake wedding, you can't show the real one. You just fucking ruined it. It would be the same. Like, we don't need to have fake crew get home and then you show what it's like for them to get home, but it's not the real fucking crew. But of course, they never actually did show what it was like when they got home in the actual show anyway, because Rick Berman sucks balls and doesn't know how to write if it was hit him over the head. But anyway, next comment is from Antarius. He says, I grew up watching Voyager and it was my favorite Star Trek show then, so all my ratings will be at least a little bit biased. I was watching this episode over and over again on VHS, but I haven't seen it for at least 13 years, so I was very curious if I still like it. I do. I like the tragic aspect of the story and the way they have to accept to be duplicates and fight to survive. It was so emotional. Is it contrived and doesn't fit with the Demon Planet episode? Certainly, but this time that didn't bother me. Next time on Voyager, they get duplicates, thousands of Borg queens who all shout Janeway. My rating is a 9 out of 10. Antares, I think the Kyrie 091's rubbing off on you a bit. Whole constantly making jokes about how I hate Endgame and how the Borg Queen says Janeway. But anyway, it was inevitable that someone in my comment section would love this episode, so I'm not surprised. You won't begrudge you that. I just humbly disagree. Anyway, next comment is from Norman Buchwald, who says, wow, a lot of people rated this one low. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is an overrated episode, and like Worst Case Scenario and Year of Hell, this episode does play at least a couple, if not more, what-ifs of the crew, and as the Silver Blood people realize who they are, there's lots of them, and they reveal the characters of Voyager we know and love. The problem with this episode, unlike Worst Case or Year of Hell, it exists literally in its own universe. Its premise is very difficult to buy. How, with the Silver Blood, did they create an exact replica of Voyager, the image, which is not easy to copy, and all the Borg components of 7 of 9? Yeah, the script and the acting seems a bit looser and less constrained, with Berman breathing down their necks, as there are conveniently no consequences as this crew is doomed. And yet, for all the places our Voyager has been and will soon be, they do not run into one species that encountered the other Voyager. It's bad enough the Equinox is not talked about or known already from other species either, such as, I don't know, the Ocampan and the Kazon. And by having the Silver Blood Voyager turn into dust and not be known by the other Voyager at the right moment, so pretentious. This is why this is overrated in spite of fine acting and an interesting concept. But as a one and done with a crew that somehow we're getting so closer to home that it does provide even much more puzzling, as much as the aliens still are around literally light years in future episodes. This may be the earliest warning with stagnant, not even a year of sentience being able to achieve all this. Interesting that the Silver Blood Harry Kim was the last survivor. I'll give it 6 Silver Blood beads out of 10. So with Equinox, the thing that pissed me off about that is, don't even get me started on the whole reason that they, like, how'd you end up in the Delta Quadrant? It's like, we met a being called the Caretaker, and they say at the same time, it's like, oh yeah, we'll talk about it later, and then they never explain it, because that makes no fucking sense. It makes no sense how the Caretaker would have been responsible for throwing the Equinox in, but that's a whole nother ball of wax. Now, as for like how this Voyager crew never encountered a species that also encountered the Silver Blood version of Voyager, I do think that's plausible. I don't mind that, because they could have went in different directions. And, it's interesting because there was a part where Chakotay and Tuvok were recounting all their previous missions, and I remember as I was watching it just now, I was thinking, oh my god, why are they just making up bullshit missions? Like, why don't they actually say what happened to the Voyager in actual episodes. And then after I watched the episode, like, it dawned on me, because this is not the real Voyager crew, so they didn't have those missions that we saw on screen. So it actually makes sense that they would have went a different way and encountered people. Now, how they happen to end up exactly close enough to the real Voyager to find it right at the end, that, of course, is serendipity. But, and how if they weren't near their course anywhere before, why are they there now? And I totally agree with you about recreating the Doctor in 7 and 9. That's very implausible. And yeah, we just led to believe that they just recreated the entire ship of Voyager. Anyway, but yeah, no, it obviously bothers me worse than it bothers you. So, next comment is from Brandon Neal Howes, who said, I had to rewatch Demon to remember the context of this episode. Pity they are both crap. I can't turn off my sense of disbelief that somehow the Silver Blood crew of Voyager can get the Silver Blood to duplicate the ship. Manage to breathe a different atmosphere, forget that they're not human crew of Voyager, and then launch the ship into space if that were even what happened. Extra points for melting makeup, which must have been really hard on the actors. Tom's final moments with B'Elanna and his reactions to her death were touching, at least to me. Janeway going psycho and insisting they have to return to Earth was predictable and disappointing. Chakotay probably died in sheer disgust. Did anyone else find the wedding vows really cringy? Mark, or was it just me? We never see the Kamada or the Nakri either. Similar episodes, Deadlock and Timeless, have consequences, but not this episode. Shit, even the title is a spoiler. 4 mentions of Ensign Harper's new baby out of 10. Yeah, so apparently the Silver Blood, there was Ensign Harper had a baby. I don't know who the fuck Ensign Harper is, but they had a baby. Whereas with the real Voyager crew, that never happens, apparently. I didn't mind the wedding vows, actually. I actually thought the wedding vows were nice. So maybe I'm just a sap. I don't know. But I didn't have an issue with them. But it's a good point. Deadlock and Timeless actually had consequences. I would argue that Year of Hell had more consequences, or more meaning, more power, even though people complain about the reset button being hit and nothing happened really mattered. But it does, because Voyager, because all that stuff actually did really happen, and that was the actual Voyager crew. They just happened to win in the end to make it so they could reset the timeline, so they didn't have to go through it. But that was the Voyager crew. We do see everything that happened to them was the Voyager crew. Because it was erased from time, doesn't change the fact that we're watching what the Voyager crew would go through in that situation. This is not the Voyager crew. It is just a Silver Blood duplicate, and granted they're supposed to be exact duplicates who act exactly like the crew, but yeah, there's too much as suspension of disbelief, as Brandon Neal Howell said. In fact, I'm starting to change my mind and agree more with Ricky about this being too serendipitous. I just never thought about it that way, but yeah, there is a lot of serendipity involved. But anyway, so those comments actually were more heavier towards agreeing with me than I thought they would be. So there you go. Anyway, my influence goes. Anyway, thank you, patrons, so much for your comments. So my rating for Course Oblivion out of 10 is going to be a 3, very poor. Now, I am being a bit more generous than a couple of my patrons who gave it 1 or 2. I was considering it, but there are parts of the episode I like, as I say. And granted, it is all undone and ruined by the ending. But there's still like nice moments. Like the thing with the interactions between Janeway and Chakotay were interesting. B'Elanna's death was interesting. Like the ready room scene, not ready room, but conference lounge scene with Janeway saying, "Oh, our death must mean something," or "We've been through all this," and the fact that it was Janeway's hubris of wanting to get home at all costs that actually led to their deaths. Like, okay, so there is some interesting things to be had in there, but I just can't get over the fact that ending just ruins everything. It makes it meaningless, and the episode could have been saved with one simple thing, a very simple. Not only that, it could have not just been saved, but actually really damn good. It could have been so powerful had they actually had Harry Kim watch his duplicate die, and you show the impact that has on him. Like, that would have made it an amazing episode. And so that's why it's so frustrating. Even though I only give it a 3, this episode's more frustrating for me to watch than episodes I would give a 1 or a 2. Unless you're talking about Tuvix or Endgame. Other than those episodes, it's more frustrating for me to watch because it could have been good. Just an easy one simple fix at the end, and you could have made this an amazing episode, but instead you make it a pointless, meaningless, apathetic, pretentious as fuck episode. And that's frustrating. It's so frustrating for me. Anyway, that is it for my review of Course Oblivion. And oh yeah, I also agree. I believe it was Brandon who said that the episode title's a spoiler. That's true. It's not a very good title. It's like, and as I was watching the episode first time, I knew they weren't going to make it because the fucking title gives that away. But anyway, so we'll see what's coming up next on my channel. Let's see if I can find the list. So I got one more of the poll winners to do for Enterprise Acquisition. Oh boy. And then on Monday, we'll be doing a non-Star Trek video with my top 10 winners of my top 10 shows of the year. On Tuesday, I'll be ranking the Star Trek series finales. That's a patron requested video. And Wednesday, I'm finally getting back on track, getting back in order of DS9 Season 3 with The Search Revisited, which will be a Patreon exclusive video for my Patreon supporters over on Patreon. And then on Thursday, I'll get back on track for everyone else for my main channel with a public review for The House of Quark. So, yeah, that's what's coming up on my channel. If you enjoyed this video and you would like to support the channel, you could consider supporting me on Patreon. There'll be a link in the description below. I do Patreon-only videos, revisiting reviews that I've already done, and many other goodies that you can check out if you so desire. But if not, if you do not so desire, but you still like what I do and want to support the channel, you can do so by leaving a like, subscribing, leaving a comment. All that stuff is also extremely helpful and very much appreciated. Yeah, be sure to check out my channel as I continue to cover Star Trek, and thanks a lot for watching.